Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to the budget debate 2019. I'm a bit under the weather, but I'll make my contribution in a brief manner. As I listened to the Minister of Finance's presentation yesterday, I first got the impression, listening to the first part of the presentation that dealt with the projects and programs proposed for implementation 2019 and beyond. It was an impressive list, and I greatly appreciated having the information. However, I also noted the growth rates that were projected for 2019. And seeing such an impressive list of projects and the program for 40 years of independence, I must say that I was deeply disappointed in the growth rates that I saw projected for 2019, both by the IMF, the World Bank, and ECLAC. I won't comment on our own projection by our own ministry. But let me just go through some of the figures, because the purpose, I assume, of listing those projects is to give an impression of what they thought our growth rate will be, and therefore, among other things, what employment will be in 2019. First of all, we have 2.3% by our own government as a growth rate. We have a 2.3 also by the IMF and 1.9 by ECLAC and 1.5. No, the 1.5 is by ECLAC. 1.3. That set in me a disappointment as to the prospects for the entire program that was outlined in the presentation, which I felt was an impressive program, particularly in light of the fact that it said a lot about climate change, which to us now must be a crucial element of any development projects that we undertake. It is absolutely vital, and I'm in full agreement with the Minister when he made much ado about the climate change effects of the projects that were being proposed. You know, in the politics that we practice in our parts here, we are very adversarial. and he too must get his licks. But I thought he was very genuine in the presentation. Although I did not agree with the conclusion that he sought to imply in terms of the levels of employment that we get from these projects. And given the relatively high unemployment rates in our country and the amount of young people who we see looking for jobs and who we know are looking for jobs, I was disappointed from that aspect. I was really disappointed from that aspect. Because I assumed that given the number of projects and the type of projects, that the unemployment effect of the implementation of those projects would be very, very large. Herein lies my greatest disappointment with the address that he gave. Mr. Speaker, all of us know that running a country is never an easy matter. You are impacted by your environment, including the political environment in which we exist, the adversarial political environment in which we exist. And one has to learn to keep one's cool and make sure that you in fact are doing justice and giving importance to those things that deserve importance. And in that context, I like the presentation as far as climate change is concerned. Mr. Speaker, you know, we come here, we all Vincentians. We come here, we put some jokes on one another sometimes. Some of them, to my mind, quite insulting. It depends on your attitude. But it is important that we recognize those realities. This is not just a shop in which we talk. It is far more than that. We are responsible for the well-being of over 100,000 people, and who look to us to make decisions on their behalf. And that is something, despite all the picking and so on, we must never, ever forget. The well-being of our people has to be the most critical thing on our minds at all times. Mr. Speaker, I listened very carefully to some of the comments that have been made. I have listened carefully when people sort of lose touch, I almost said with their minds, but who lose the sense of support for one another in the act that we are trying to accomplish, that is the development of our people. And I find that we have lost a lot in this debate in that regard. I want to say one has to look very carefully at what you propose to your country. We have grave differences between our two parties about matters which you all know about. Citizen by Investment Program. We have grave differences between ourselves. But we must all know by this date what have been the results. As the leader of Jobs has pointed out, about our Citizen by Investment Program, what it means for many of the countries in our region right here near to us. We cannot ignore. And there's sufficient evidence. I know there are those and who have reasons, and maybe good reasons, why they're not too supportive. But the history and the evidence before us today says that this program has done well for many of our neighboring countries. We are talking about countries which in a year could earn $500 million in the OECS by this project. I know that the many in the international community who themselves are involved in those projects would like to keep us out. But some of our countries, particularly St. Kitts, have been doing this since 1984. And it has meant a big difference to the people of that country. I went there some time ago, and I was given a tour of some of the projects that have been financed by the Citizen by Investment Program. And despite the worry that might bring that those in the more developed world will try to get us out of this activity, I'm suggesting or recommending to the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines that this is something we cannot sneeze at. We have too much difficulty raising funds. You know, there's something that struck me while the minister was speaking. And to me it was like, am I hearing right? We are getting financing for budget support. In the same way we're talking about our independence, we're also seeking and getting money for budget support. That is something you associate with colonies. I don't want to associate myself with that on the 40th anniversary of our independence. I really don't want to do that. No. Don't want to do that at all. We have to work together with those in our region and those beyond to settle this dispute, to ensure that those who are involved and could be involved in further projects don't lose their interest. They benefit from it too, but we, the unemployed of our country, the government and people of our countries, benefit even more. When you look up the number of young people, sometimes, who are unemployed, it's really difficult to deal with. And to know that one investor could make a very large difference to the people in our country and the lives of so many people in our country. We're talking about $500–600 million in a year, on which we don't have to pay any taxes to get it. We don't have to borrow to get it. It's an investment made by those who are involved in this program. You have Dominica looking now at financing their agile from Citizen by Investment programs. You know what difference something like that makes? You know what our taxation would have been like today if we didn't have that program? Our nationals would be paying much higher taxes in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today. But we're paying it anyway, because we're not in the program. But you know, Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, all of them are benefiting. I looked at a hotel project in St. Kitts some time ago. It's unbelievable. A hotel project, unbelievable. But it's citizen by investment, not citizen by loan, citizen by investment, which reduces the amount of taxation that we put on our own nationals. We must not forget that. We must not forget that at all. These things are too important to tamper with just for politics. Mr. Speaker, I just want to deal with a few areas because I was concerned with the way our debate was developing. I haven't come here to joke.
I know, I'm joking.
I take this matter with the utmost seriousness. And therefore, I waste no time on jokes. Too many people in our country are unemployed for me to be joking here in the Parliament of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You the one who ran against me? That is why you wake up. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, something really bothered me in the budget address. And it is one of the few areas I will deal with. But I am very annoyed that has happened. The minister rightly said, we have to look at our NIS, our pension programs and so on, in the next few years, probably even earlier than that. I agree with that, 100%. You know, when I think of it, here we are, talking about people's pensions through the NIS and through the public service pension scheme. You all know that the public service pension scheme, there is no contribution by the members. You know what the arrangements are for the NIS. The Prime Minister recently said in this Parliament that the maintenance of the public service pension scheme is becoming too costly. It therefore raises the question as to in what form will it continue if it is too costly. It raised that question very seriously. And those persons who have toiled in the public service over the years, who are now receiving their pensions, are worried. The unions are worried about it, very concerned about it. And I assume that we, who are responsible for the governance of this country, are equally concerned. Mr. Speaker, this is something that people want to hide their heads and their faces from, you know. I can't say I know how it will be resolved, but whatever resolution takes place will have something to do with the NIS and generally to the finances of this country. There are grave implications for pensions, grave implications, and that is not something to joke about. It should not be the subject at all of any joke. Too many lives are dependent on it. You know, all of us know, that the NIS has been operating for many years now. I can't remember what. I was once the chairman of the NIS. And I know what it means to people. Whether it's a death benefit, whether it's a pension, whatever benefit. And I know the costs of its operations have been increasing. Therefore, in dealing with that issue of the national insurance services and pensions generally, we have to use very sober heads. I know there's a committee, and I agree that a committee has been set up. Am I right, Mr. Minister? A committee has been set up, I saw it in your presentation, to look at the review. That's the whole situation. It's not going to be an easy task. It's going to be a very difficult thing to do. And at the same time, keeping people happy. It's going to be very difficult. You know, you can't come now and charge people who don't make any contribution to their pension and do anything to them in that regard. You have so many of them, hundreds and maybe thousands who have finished their years of service. What are you going to do with them? The costs haven't gone down, they continue to go up. And therefore the government contribution is 100% of those costs. It's 100% of those costs. Because the employee or employer don't make any contribution except that the government contributes all. That's what it boils down to. That's what it means. So the beneficiary makes no contribution. So when I noticed in the presentation that a committee was set up, and having heard the comments about the cost of maintenance of the program, we have a hell of a task on our hands. We have an obligation to people who have served this country for years. And we have to find a solution. You have enough trouble with persons who were in NIS, who made their contributions, and even the rate, the retirement age is going up for the NIS program, that too has its implications for the government pension scheme also, and the finances of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I chose to concentrate on this, There are a lot of other things here I can talk about, and Dr. Friday mentioned a lot of them yesterday. But I pay particular attention to the NIS. And therefore, I was deeply, deeply disappointed to find that the government proposes to use NIS funds not simply to invest in the hotel at Diamond near the airport, not only to invest in it, but to take equity, to become a shareholder in it. So those funds, unless a project makes money, will never go back to the NIS members. And if it makes losses, the loss is gone. Why did the government take such a decision to finance a program like that from the NIS? If it was a loan, I would understand. You what? No, but this is equity. I don't know if they have a loan project, is a different one. Yeah. My concern is that is equity. I don't know how much is the equity stake that has been proposed. I understand the project is cost 10 million? US. 10 million US. How much of that is being taken from NIS? How much of the 10 million US is coming from the NIS? It's not clear from the documents. But it should not have come from there at all in the first instance. That was a wrong decision, a terrible decision that has been made, and we live to regret it.
We mayn't do it yet, so let's hope not.
Well, the project is in the book we have here. And when the Minister of Finance speaks, I assume that he knows what he's speaking about. I was so stunned at seeing that a decision could be taken of that nature. And I've been getting calls on it to explain what I mean by equity. NIS don't own it, own part of it at least. I don't know what else, which other monies will go there. But when it loses money, NIS ain't getting back that money. If it loses money for 10 years, NIS not getting back that money, and therefore the beneficiaries of the NIS will have less money that they could turn on. NIS will have less money than it should have had if it gave a loan to a project. So I just want, at this stage, to point out that that is something that must be dealt with, and dealt with quickly. I'm appealing to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to deal with this matter promptly. Already the task, as the ministers already pointed out, already the task that the committee has to take on is difficult. And the rest of it is difficult.
I remember you have 15 minutes.
Yeah. 115, is that?
15 minutes. 15 minutes. Well, you did say you weren't going to speak long.
No, I'm not going. I don't even know if I use the 15. Huh? No, I only have 15 minutes. I can't cool down with that, you know. I can't cool down. Mr. Speaker, I want to... That was my main issue. I just want to raise the Minister with the Minister of Agriculture. He said so? Oh. Yes. My agricultural neighbor. Neighbor. He was talking in his presentation about agriculture and other commodities which are non-agricultural, and the institutional arrangements that are needed to be put in place to deal with that situation. That too is a difficult issue. We have partial credit guarantees. Is a bill we have passed in this House, an agreement in which the central bank was very much involved. And I see that some people have been trained. There were 60 persons I noticed who have been trained in this area who could take a place in that line to see what they can do for their projects. Partial credit guarantee, which we passed more than a year ago, is an important step in providing financing for those would-be entrepreneurs, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing, whatever it is. And we mustn't lose sight of that. So it's not just a question, oh, I'm moving out of banana, not in banana. You're widening the base of the economy in relation to projects, which is what, in fact, we provide the employment that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, I hope that much and urgent attention is paid to the question of the role of the NIS going forward over the next few years. Not only in terms of the NIS itself, but what other activity it may be called to get involved in that involves cash. We have to be able to do it. And that is going to be difficult. My recommendation, what it may be worth, is to keep out of that. Don't use NIS funds on an equity basis in any enterprise. It's hard enough when you have to use loans on concessionary terms, as we have done before in this country, you know. We gave Dominica a 3% loan from the NIS once, you know. That was wrong. I know they had a hurricane. And they say you must look after our region. But you should ask for somebody's support from somewhere, rather than use the NIS for that purpose. I'm very serious about this, you know. I have a saying I use all the time. The INS is supposed to be here when God comes for his word. Much obliged, Mr. Speaker.